You are a P-47 Thunderbolt pilot in March 1944, having just escorted a bomber formation deep into German territory. Now, on the hunt for targets of opportunity, a Luftwaffe airfield sprawls below, rows of Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs arrayed like sitting ducks. Your flight leader calls the attack. You roll into the standard dive, lining up on the runway from the east, the approach you've trained for countless times back in England. Then the world explodes. Tracers arc up from every corner of the airfield. The flak is so thick you could practically walk on it. Your wingman takes a direct hit and peels off, trailing black smoke. You're committed, screaming in at $300 MPH, but every gun emplacement on that field knew exactly where you'd come from. They'd been waiting. You strafe the parked aircraft, seeing your round spark off a BF-109, but you're taking heavy hits. Your Thunderbolt shudders as $20. Textile or shells punch through the wing. You pull up hard, adrenaline masking the damage, and somehow nurse your shot-up fighter back across the channel. This wasn't a one-time disaster. This was the grim reality for American fighter pilots. Strafing missions had become suicide runs, with casualty rates that made bomber crews wince. The problem wasn't pilot skill, it was predictability. American pilots were following textbook attack patterns that the Luftwaffe had long since solved. Every airfield in occupied Europe was designed for aircraft to take off and land heading east, into the prevailing westerly winds. Logically, American pilots attacked from the east, too, following the path that provided the longest strafing run down the runway. The Luftwaffe was not foolish. German anti-aircraft crews positioned their guns exactly where they'd do the most damage, concentrated entirely on the eastern approaches. Every $20 Artext am quad mount, every $37 Artext am Flak gun, every machine gun nest was sighted into this predictable avenue of attack. When American fighters came screaming in from the east, they flew directly into a pre-registered kill zone. It was a meat grinder specifically engineered to chew up American fighters. The loss rates told a brutal story. In early 1944, 8th Fighter Command was losing aircraft at nearly 4 times the rate of air-to-air combat. Pilots who'd survived months of dogfighting were being shot down by gunners they never even saw. Something had to change fast, because the invasion of Europe was coming, and air superiority was needed not just in the sky, but on the ground. The Luftwaffe had spent years perfecting airfield defense into a science, not a hasty scattering of machine guns. German engineers had transformed every operational airfield into a layered fortress of overlapping fields of fire, nearly impossible to penetrate without catastrophic damage. A typical airfield featured between 40 and 80 anti-aircraft positions, utilizing a defense-in-depth concept. Outer ring, 800, 1,000, light $20 Textman Flak 38s, positioned to engage aircraft before they could line up the strafing pass. Intermediate layer, 400, 600 meter. Heavier, $37 Artext Ami and $40 Artext Namider guns. A single $37 Artext Amidar round could tear the wing off a P-47 Thunderbolt. Survivors reported seeing these medium guns tracking them with terrifying practice precision. Inner ring, under 300 mm. Quad-mounted $20 Text Mir guns, pumping out nearly 500 rounds per minute per mount. German gunners called this the Feuerwand, or Firewall. The true genius lay in the placement. Because they knew their own aircraft, and thus the attacking Americans, would approach from the east, they stacked virtually all defensive firepower on that approach. Every gun position had pre-calculated firing solutions. Gunners didn't have to guess. They had practiced hitting targets from those exact angles hundreds of times. American pilots were facing a defensive philosophy that had correctly predicted their every move. Colonel Hubert Zemke, commander of the legendary 56th Fighter Group, the Wolfpack, was an officer who approached air combat like an engineer. He refused to accept these unacceptable casualty rates. Zemke started collecting data, debriefing survivors, mapping damage, and studying reconnaissance photos of every visible flak position. What emerged was a pattern that seemed too simple to be true. The Luftwaffe had built their defenses for attacks from the east. period. The Western approaches had perhaps one-third the gun emplacements, and those that existed were positioned to engage aircraft climbing out, not coming in fresh. Zemke realized something crucial about the heavy guns. They couldn't easily traverse fast enough to engage targets coming from unexpected angles. Engaging a $300 Hertext $50 fighter required calculated lead, elevation, and deflection. The Germans had done the math in advance for eastward approaches. A target coming from the west would require the gunners to completely reverse their firing solutions in a matter of seconds. It was the difference between shooting at a target you'd practiced hitting 1,000 times and trying to shoot at something coming from behind you. Before we reveal how Zemke's radical reverse pattern tactic broke the German defense, please take a moment to hit the like button below. Your support helps us share these incredible stories of military innovation. If you're fascinated by WWII strategy, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us what you think of Zemke's analytical approach. Zemke proposed something radical. Attack Luftwaffe airfields from the west against the normal traffic pattern, strafing in the opposite direction of takeoffs and landings. His staff thought he was crazy. Conventional wisdom demanded attacking along the runway axis. But Zemke had done the math. If attacking from the west meant his pilots took 70% less flak damage, they could afford a slightly reduced time on target. Dead pilots couldn't destroy aircraft. Live pilots could come around for a second pass. The kill-to-loss ratio would improve dramatically. This tactical concept became known as reverse pattern strafing. Instead of flying into the optimized kill zone, American fighters would come in low from the west, use the element of surprise before flak crews could respond, then egress eastward, climbing out through what had been the expected approach corridor. By the time German gunners traversed their heavy weapons around, the fighters would be accelerating away at treetop level, below the depression limits of the most dangerous guns. Zemke needed to prove it. The target. Oscherleben, a Luftwaffe airfield repeatedly attacked using conventional methods, resulting in 11 American losses. On May 8, 1944, 16 P-47 Thunderbolts of the 56th Fighter Group approached Oscherleben from the west at minimum altitude, masked by terrain. They popped up just 2 miles from the field, giving the German defenders almost no time to react. The attack unfolded exactly as Zemke predicted. The Thunderbolts screamed over the western perimeter. Only a handful of light flak guns opened up, their crews frantically trying to track targets that had already passed their firing position. Captain Walker Mahuron's flight hit the primary dispersal area. His 8 50 caliber machine guns chewed through 3 Focke-Wulfs in a single burst. Lieutenant Robert Johnson's flight concentrated on the northern revetments, hitting the sandbag positions from the rear quarter, where the Germans hadn't reinforced them. Johnson personally destroyed 4 Messerschmitts in a single 5-second burst. The German flak crews were in chaos. The heavy 37 Tatzerie Text M-Taler guns on the eastern side were designed to engage targets coming toward them, not targets already overhead and moving away. By the time gunners rotated their weapons, the Thunderbolts were egressing east at maximum speed and minimum altitude. The devastating, concentrated fire never materialized. The Firewall had a fatal gap. The results stunned 8th Fighter Command. The 56th destroyed 23 German aircraft on the ground, more than twice the typical haul. More importantly, all 16 attacking Thunderbolts returned to base. 0 losses. For a heavily defended strafing mission, that was unheard of. Zemke's success exposed a fundamental weakness rooted in physics, engineering limitations, and operational reality. German heavy flak guns needed 6 to 9 seconds to physically rotate their weapons, 180 circ dollars. American fighters were only 12 seconds out from being overhead. The window for effective engagement collapsed from 15 seconds to maybe 3 or 4 seconds of viable firing time. Furthermore, once the fighters egressed low, they flew below the depression limits, the minimum angle, of the most dangerous heavy anti-aircraft weapons. The Germans' sophisticated defense system became their greatest liability. The tactical solution spread like wildfire. By late May 1944, the reverse pattern concept was adopted across the command. On May 22, 1944, 8th Fighter Command issued Tactical Directive 244, explicitly authorizing the new technique. Between May 21st and June 5th, the loss rate dropped from 8.3% per conventional mission to 2.1% using reverse pattern tactics. The destruction rate of German aircraft on the ground nearly doubled. The math was undeniable. For every American fighter lost, the Luftwaffe was losing significantly more of its own planes. The Luftwaffe knew exactly what was happening and desperately requested mobile flak batteries and new defensive layouts, but they couldn't overcome the constraints of wartime logistics. You couldn't move a heavy flak gun in the few weeks they had available. Some German fighter units simply abandoned forward airfields entirely, retreating deeper into Germany, a devastating admission of defeat that ceded air superiority to the Allies just before D-Day. The core principle that Colonel Zemke proved became foundational doctrine. Identify your enemy's assumptions about how you'll attack, then do something else. The ripples of this single tactical innovation are still visible in modern air warfare, taught today at institutions like the U.S. Air Force Weapons School. The reverse pattern strafing technique didn't just save American lives, it fundamentally reshaped the air war over Europe. If you were fascinated by Colonel Zemke's strategic insight and the incredible story of the P-47 pilots, please make sure to hit the like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into military tactics and history, and leave a comment below telling us what you found most ingenious about the reverse pattern attack.